My mom disappeared for 5 years. When she came back, she wasn't the same. I still remember the day my mom disappeared like it was yesterday. I was only 15 at the time, young enough to believe that my family was invincible, like the world couldn't touch us, like nothing bad could ever really happen. But that day shattered that illusion. It wasn't dramatic at first. There were no warning signs, no loud arguments, no dramatic goodbye. One morning she was just gone. I woke up to an empty house. No note, no explanation. The house was eerily quiet, and I remember that silence haunting me for hours. It wasn't until I checked her room, her clothes were gone, her suitcase was missing, that I realized it wasn't a temporary thing. She wasn't coming back. At first we tried to explain it away. Maybe she had left for a weekend getaway, or maybe she was just going through something. But as the days turned into weeks, the calls stopped coming. Her friends didn't know where she was. Her work didn't know where she was. The police didn't know where she was. My dad was silent, lost in his own confusion, and my world felt like it was collapsing. I was left alone with the emptiness of it all. My mom, the woman who had always been the center of my world, gone without a trace. I remember going through her things that first week, trying to find something, anything that would explain her disappearance. I found old pictures of her smiling with friends, little mementos from our family vacations, and a few of her journals. But nothing stood out. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. She didn't leave behind any messages, no clues as to where she had gone or why. The more I searched, the more I realized that I was looking for answers in the wrong places. It wasn't until a month had passed that my dad finally broke down. I'd never seen him cry before, not even when my mom was diagnosed with cancer a few years earlier. But now, as the reality of her absence set in, he wasn't the strong, stoic man I had always known. He was just a broken version of himself, wandering the house as if he were searching for something that had been taken from him. His shoulders slumped, his eyes hollow with exhaustion, and there were times when I felt like I was the one holding the family together. But I wasn't strong enough to carry it all. I was still just a kid, and as the days turned into months, the weight of my mom's disappearance became unbearable. I started to withdraw from my friends. I couldn't explain what was happening at home, and every time I tried to talk about it, I realized I didn't have any answers. It was like I was living in some kind of limbo, neither in the past nor the future, just suspended in the emptiness that her absence had created. By the time the first year had passed, I had begun to lose hope that she would ever return. My dad and I didn't talk much about her anymore. It was too painful, and it seemed like the more we mentioned her name, the more we reminded each other of what we had lost. Life went on as it always does. I went back to school, finished my sophomore year, and tried to put my life back together in the broken pieces that remained. But then something strange happened. 5 years later, when I was 20, I got a call in the middle of the night. I was living on my own by then, trying to navigate adulthood without really understanding what I was doing. It was my dad on the other end of the line, his voice shaking, barely recognizable. "She's back," he whispered. The words didn't make sense at first. My heart stopped for a second. I thought I had misunderstood him. My mom had been gone for 5 years. No one had heard from her. No one had known where she was. And now, my dad was telling me she was back. "She's back," he repeated, and I could hear the disbelief in his voice. "She's standing at the door just like she was never gone." I didn't know what to think. Part of me wanted to believe him, to run to him, to hear her voice again. But another part of me was terrified. What did this mean? What happened to her all this time? Why had she disappeared? And most importantly, who was this woman standing at my dad's door? Was it really my mom, or was it something else, someone else? I told my dad I'd be there as soon as I could, but I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if I was walking into a dream or a nightmare. I just grabbed my coat, my keys, and left my apartment in a daze, the cold night air hitting me with the harsh reality of what was about to happen. The drive to my dad's house felt like it lasted forever. I couldn't get the image of my mom out of my head, her face, her voice, everything that I had lost. I thought about all the years I spent without her, the unanswered questions that still haunted me. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I knew that I had no clue what was really going on. When I arrived at my dad's house, the porch light was on. I walked up to the door slowly, my feet heavy as if I were walking through water. My dad opened the door before I could knock, his face pale, his eyes wide. He looked at me as if he was seeing a ghost. "She's in there," he whispered, barely able to speak. "She came back, but she's not the same, Alex." I froze at his words. My heart skipped a beat. Not the same. What did he mean by that? What could possibly make my mom not the same? I stepped inside, my heart racing, unsure of what to expect. The house felt strange. The warmth that had once defined it was gone. I walked down the hall to the living room and there she was sitting on the couch. She looked just like my mom, her brown hair, her eyes, the way she carried herself, but there was something off about her. The woman who sat there didn't seem like the person I remembered. She seemed distant, her eyes unfocused, as if she were seeing the world through a veil. Her gaze met mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of recognition, but it quickly faded, replaced by something else, something that felt unfamiliar. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Alex," she said, her voice soft and distant, "you've grown so much, I've missed you." But it wasn't her voice. It wasn't the warm, comforting sound I remembered. It was hollow, detached. She was speaking to me, but she wasn't there, not in the way she used to be. I stood there frozen, unsure of what to say. I wanted to run to her, to hold her and tell her everything was going to be okay, but I couldn't. I couldn't shake the feeling that this woman, this person who looked like my mom, wasn't my mom at all. "Mom," I whispered, my voice shaky. "Where have you been? What happened to you?" Her eyes flickered with something like confusion. "What do you mean? I've been here all along. I just needed to find myself. I had to figure things out." Her response was strange, disjointed. It didn't make sense. 5 years. 5 years of nothing, no messages, no signs, no explanation, and now she was back. But she wasn't the person I remembered. "What do you mean, find yourself?" I asked, my voice growing more desperate. "Where have you been all this time? What happened to you?" She looked at me for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, with a sigh, she stood up slowly. "I don't think you're ready to hear the truth," she said quietly, almost to herself. "I don't think anyone is ready." The words hit me like a punch. I felt a chill run through me. My mom was back, but she wasn't the same. And whatever had happened to her, whatever she had been through, was something far darker than I could have ever imagined. The air inside the house felt thick with confusion, like it was pressing in on me, forcing me to breathe in the uncertainty. I stood there, still trying to process the fact that my mother was standing in front of me, but not really standing in front of me. She looked like the mom I had known for most of my life. Same height, same hair, same eyes, but there was an emptiness about her. She was a stranger wrapped in my mother's skin, and it terrified me. She walked past me slowly, her movements deliberate, almost mechanical, and sat down again on the couch, not looking at me but staring at the wall across the room, as though lost in thought. The air between us felt heavy, like there was something unsaid, something I couldn't even begin to understand. "Mom," I said again, a little louder this time, stepping forward. "Where have you been? Why didn't you come back all these years? You just left. I didn't hear from you. I didn't know if you were dead or alive." Her face twitched at the mention of the years that had passed, but her expression never fully changed. She didn't seem distressed or panicked. She didn't even seem like she was struggling with the words she was saying. It was like she was reciting something she'd rehearsed, something that wasn't tied to emotion anymore. "I couldn't come back," she said finally, her voice hollow. "I wasn't who I needed to be. I had to change." The words didn't make sense. How could someone change so completely that they couldn't even come back home? I was desperate for some kind of explanation, some reason to believe that the woman sitting in front of me wasn't lost forever. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "Change?" I repeated. "Mom, you disappeared. You left us without a word, without a trace. And now, 5 years later, you come back like nothing happened." She looked at me then, her gaze cold, distant, but with a flicker of something. Regret, pain. Maybe it was just a glimpse of the mother I had known, buried deep beneath the surface, fighting to come through. "Don't you see," she said, her voice quieter now. "I wasn't who I needed to be, not for you, not for your dad, and not for myself." She paused and looked down at her hands, the movement slow and deliberate, like she was trying to remember something important. "I thought I was protecting you by staying away. I thought you'd be better off without me." I felt the weight of her words sink in, but it didn't make sense. Protecting me? From what? My voice cracked, and I hated how small I sounded. I didn't want to sound like I was begging for answers, but I was. What could you have possibly been protecting me from? She sat up straighter now, finally meeting my gaze, her expression unreadable. "From what I became, from who I was when I left. You weren't supposed to see that side of me." Her words were like a cold slap to my face. There was something deeper, something darker behind her disappearance. I knew she had struggled before, had gone through some personal challenges that I was never fully aware of, but this felt different. She wasn't just talking about leaving to clear her mind or get some space. She was talking about something much more serious, something she hadn't told me. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking now. "What do you mean? What side of you? What happened?" But instead of answering, she stood up abruptly, her eyes distant again, like she wasn't really seeing me anymore. "It's too complicated to explain, Alex," she said, her voice becoming strained as though even the words themselves were too much to handle. "It's not just about me. It's about everything that happened. I can't go back to the person I was before. I'm not her anymore." I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but something in her tone held me back. She wasn't just hiding from me, she was hiding from herself. Whatever had happened to her in the years she'd been gone had broken something inside her, and she wasn't ready to face it. I was about to say something, but I was interrupted by my dad's voice from the hallway. His tired face appeared in the doorway, and he looked at both of us with a strange mixture of relief and uncertainty. He had been quiet ever since I arrived, retreating into himself, not offering many words. But now, seeing my mom in the room again, something in his posture shifted. It's really her, isn't it?" he said softly, almost to himself. I turned to him, feeling a pang of anger. "How could you let this happen, Dad?" I demanded. "How could you let her disappear for 5 years without telling me anything, without any explanation?" My dad didn't flinch at my anger. He looked like he had already been through this conversation 1,000 times in his head, but still didn't have an answer. "I didn't know what to do," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "I didn't know where she was. She told me to stay away, told me not to search for her, and I didn't know if she was coming back. I thought I had to let her go." I stood there speechless. How could he have just stood by? How could he have let her leave without trying harder to bring her back? He had always been so strong, so dependable. But now, he seemed like a shadow of that man, defeated, broken. I turned back to my mom. She was still staring at the floor, her face an unreadable mask. I had so many questions, but no answers were coming. I was seeing my mom, but I couldn't recognize her. She had returned, but she was no longer the woman I remembered. This person, standing in front of me, was a stranger. "I need to know what happened, Mom," I said, my voice quieter now. "I need to know where you've been, why you disappeared. I can't just accept that you left for no reason." Her eyes flickered up to meet mine, and for a brief moment I saw the pain in them. The woman I had known, the one who loved me unconditionally, was still there. But it was buried so deep, hidden behind the walls she had built around herself. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I left because I had to. I had to disappear to save myself, to save all of us." I shook my head, unable to understand. "Save us from what? What happened to you, Mom?" She took a deep breath, as though summoning the strength to speak, and then finally. Her eyes locked onto mine with a sharpness that made me freeze. "There were people, Alex, people who made me do things I can't undo." The air seemed to shift around us, as though the very room was holding its breath. My pulse quickened. My mom had always been a private person, but this was different. This wasn't just a personal issue. This was something darker, something far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. "Who?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who made you do things?" But instead of answering, my mom just shook her head, her expression distant again. "I can't tell you that. Not yet. Not until you're ready. I've made too many mistakes, Alex, and I'm not sure if I can fix them. But I'm here now, and that's all I can give you." I wanted to push her to demand answers, but something in her face stopped me. There was pain in her eyes, guilt, fear, something I couldn't name. She wasn't ready to tell me everything, and I knew that. But I also knew one thing. Whatever had happened to her, whatever had broken her, wasn't something I could fix by forcing her to talk. She would have to do that on her own time. As the hours passed and the night drew on, I sat in that room with my mom, my dad, and a silence that felt heavier than anything I had ever experienced. My mom was back, but she wasn't the same. And in that moment, I realized that finding her wasn't enough. We had a long road ahead of us, and if we were ever going to heal, we would need to confront the things that had kept us apart for so long. But I wasn't sure if we could. The days following my mom's return were a blur of confusion, silence, and unspoken questions. It felt like I was living in a suspended reality, a place where time had stopped, and everything I thought I knew about my family was slowly unraveling. My mom was home, but the woman who stood in front of me wasn't the same person I had grown up with. The warmth, the love, the reassurance, everything that had defined her was gone, replaced by a coldness I didn't understand. I tried to give her space, tried to allow her to open up when she was ready, but that didn't come. Every conversation felt strained. She would speak in fragments, only revealing bits and pieces of what had happened to her, never the full picture. And the more she withdrew, the more frustrated I became. I couldn't understand why she wouldn't talk to me, why she refused to share what she had been through. Every question I asked only seemed to drive her further away, and with each passing day, it felt like the distance between us grew wider. There were moments when I would catch her staring out the window, her eyes vacant, lost in thoughts I couldn't reach. The house, which used to feel like home, now felt like a mausoleum, silent, hollow, as if all the life that had once been there had evaporated into the air. Even my dad, who had always been the rock of our family, seemed adrift. He didn't talk much either, and when he did, his words were heavy with something I couldn't name. Guilt, regret. Or was it just the weight of all the years that had passed without any explanation? One evening, as I was sitting in the kitchen, trying to work through my own feelings about everything, my mom entered, her steps hesitant as though she were unsure whether or not to disturb me. She stood in the doorway for a moment, just watching me, and I glanced up, startled by the quiet presence she had become. "I know you're angry," she said, her voice soft, almost fragile. "I know I should have come back sooner, but I couldn't. You don't understand what I had to go through." I set down the glass I had been holding and looked at her. "Then help me understand, Mom. Help me understand why you left. I've spent 5 years thinking you were dead, and now you're here and you're not the same. Why?" She didn't answer immediately. She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice seemed so far away, as if the words were coming from a place she hadn't been able to reach for years. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," she said, her voice cracking. "I left because it was the only way to protect you, protect both of you, your father. He didn't know the full truth either. I kept it from him because I thought he'd be better off not knowing. I thought if I disappeared, it would keep you safe." "Safe from what?" I asked, my voice rising in frustration. "What could possibly make you think disappearing for 5 years would keep us safe?" My mom's eyes closed, as though bracing herself for what she was about to say. "There are things in this world that we can't control, Alex. There are people out there who will stop at nothing to get what they want. People who take everything from you, even your family, and they don't care who gets hurt in the process." I felt a coldness seep into the room, the air growing heavier with every word. "What are you talking about?" I asked, my throat tight with the sense that we were edging toward something dangerous, something I wasn't ready for. She paused for a long time before responding. "I wasn't always the person you think I was. There's a side of me, a side that I never wanted you to see. And because of that side, because of what I got involved in, I had to leave. I had to disappear to keep you safe, to keep your dad safe." I stood up from the table, feeling a rush of anger and fear. "Involved in what, Mom? What did you get involved in? And why couldn't you just tell me? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" Her hands trembled as she reached for the chair, gripping it for support. "Because it was too dangerous. If I had told you, they would have come after you, after your dad, and I couldn't risk that. I couldn't risk losing you too." I felt the room spinning around me. My heart was pounding and I felt like I couldn't breathe. "Who were they, Mom?" I asked, the question now feeling like it was tearing at the fabric of everything I thought I knew. "Who are these people? What do they want with you?" My mom's eyes flickered toward the door as though expecting someone to walk in at any moment. She looked around nervously before lowering her voice. "I made mistakes, Alex. I got involved with the wrong people. I didn't realize who they were at first. They promised me protection, money, a better life. But it was all a lie. I became their pawn. I was controlled. They made me do things I couldn't undo. And when I realized what was happening, when I realized I couldn't escape, I made the hardest decision of my life." I sat back down at the table, my legs feeling weak beneath me. "What decision?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What did you do?" "I ran," she said simply. "I ran because they would have never stopped coming for me. They would have kept using me, kept controlling me, and they would have hurt you, Alex. I had to disappear. It was the only way to keep you safe." I felt the world shift beneath me. My mom, the woman I had always trusted, had been hiding something far darker than I could have ever imagined. I had spent years thinking she had abandoned me without explanation, but now I was learning that she hadn't just left, she had run. She had been forced into a life she never wanted, and she had kept that secret from me. "Who were they, Mom?" I asked again, my voice cracking this time. "Who were these people? Why didn't you tell us?" But her eyes darkened and she shook her head slowly. "I can't say, not yet, not until I know it's safe." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "They're still out there, Alex. They're still watching me, watching us." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who are they? What do they want from you?" But she didn't answer. She stood up abruptly, her hand gripping the edge of the table as if she were struggling to hold herself together. "I can't tell you everything, Alex. Not yet. But you have to understand, this isn't over. I didn't come back because I wanted to. I came back because I have to make things right, but I can't do it alone." I stood up slowly, my heart racing, trying to understand what she was telling me. This wasn't just about a woman who had disappeared and returned. It was about something much bigger, something dangerous. And if what she was saying was true, then my entire life had been built on a lie. My mom had been part of something dark, something I had never seen, and I was now standing at the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face. "I'm here now," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "But we're not safe yet. I need you to trust me, Alex, and we need to be careful. This isn't over." I didn't know what to say. I didn't know if I could trust her again, not completely. But the one thing I knew for sure was this: my mom was back, and the woman who had left was not the same as the one who had returned. And whatever secrets she held, whatever forces had driven her away, I had to find out. There was no going back now. The days after that conversation with my mom felt like an emotional roller coaster. She had returned to us, but the woman who had come back was the mother I had known. There was a coldness in her, an emptiness that made everything feel distant and strange. I couldn't stop thinking about the things she had said, the vague warnings, the cryptic references to the people she had been involved with. There was a part of me that wanted to trust her, to believe that the woman I had known was still buried under all the walls she had built around herself. But I couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was terribly wrong. The house, once filled with warmth and life, now felt like a haunted place. Every corner seemed to echo with the silence between us. My dad, who had barely said a word since my mom's return, seemed even more distant. I could tell that he was trying to put on a brave face, but it was obvious that he, too, was struggling to come to terms with everything. There were so many unspoken questions between us, between all of us, and yet no one seemed ready to ask them. My mom was here, but it felt like she was still a million miles away, lost in her own world of secrets. I tried to reach out to her, tried to have conversations, but it was like talking to a wall. Every time I asked her about what had happened during those 5 years, she would change the subject, or worse, become defensive, as though just talking about it was too painful. I didn't know how to help her, how to bring her back from whatever dark place she had been. I wanted to believe that she could just walk back into our lives and things would go back to normal, but the truth was, she wasn't the same. And I wasn't sure if we could ever go back to the way things were. One evening, about a week after her return, I found myself sitting alone in the living room, the silence between me and my dad growing thicker by the day. I had been packing the house, restless, unable to focus on anything. I could feel my thoughts circling back to that one question that had been haunting me since she returned. What happened? As I sat there, lost in my own thoughts, the doorbell rang. I hadn't expected anyone. We hadn't had visitors since my mom came back, and I wasn't sure if I even wanted visitors. But something in the pit of my stomach told me this was important. Without thinking, I got up and opened the door. Standing there was a man I had never seen before. He was in his mid-40s, wearing a plain black suit, his face etched with sharp lines that suggested years of experience with hardship. His eyes were calculating, cold, and when he looked at me, I felt a sudden wave of unease wash over me. "Are you Alex?" he asked, his voice smooth but urgent. I nodded, unsure of how to respond. "Yes, who are you?" "My name is Paul," he said, his eyes flickering toward the door behind me. "I need to speak with your mother." My heart skipped a beat. "My mom, why, who are you?" Paul didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a small step forward, lowering his voice as if the conversation needed to remain private. "This is urgent," he said, his tone sharp. "It's a matter of security. Please, let me speak with her." A knot formed in my stomach. I was used to my mom's mysterious behavior, but I had never encountered anyone like this man. His presence alone made my skin crawl. There was something unsettling about him, something that didn't sit right with me. "I don't think you should be here," I said, trying to step back and close the door, but Paul quickly moved to block it. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said, his eyes never leaving mine. "But I'm afraid the situation has escalated and it's become dangerous. For her, for you, especially for your father. If you want her to be safe, I need to speak with her." His words hit me like a hammer. Dangerous. My mom had been through so much, and now this. I glanced toward the living room where I knew my mom was sitting. My dad, however, was nowhere to be found. He had probably retreated to his room to avoid this confrontation, as he had done so many times before. With a deep breath, I stepped aside, reluctantly letting the stranger in. "Fine, but you'd better explain yourself." Paul nodded once, a glimmer of approval in his cold eyes. Without another word, he walked past me, moving into the house like he had done this many times before. He didn't wait for me to lead him. Instead, he walked straight to the living room, his movements efficient, purposeful. "Mom," I called out, my voice unsteady. "Someone's here to see you." My mom looked up from her place on the couch, her expression unreadable. I could tell she had seen Paul before. There was a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but she didn't react. Her posture remained rigid, distant. She had shut herself off again, her walls so high that I couldn't get to her no matter how hard I tried. Paul stood in front of her now, waiting for her to acknowledge him. She didn't respond immediately, and I could see the tension in her shoulders. I felt a wave of unease pass through me, like something dark was about to happen. Finally, my mom spoke, her voice low but steady. "What do you want, Paul?" He didn't hesitate. "We need to talk about what's been happening. They're getting closer. You've been gone too long and they've taken notice. We need to act fast before they do." My heart skipped a beat. Who was he talking about? Who were these people? And why was my mom acting so calm? She wasn't reacting the way I expected. She wasn't afraid or even surprised. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment, waiting for him. "Do you understand what you're asking?" she replied, her voice tight, but her gaze never wavered from Paul. "It's not that simple." "Nothing about this has ever been simple," Paul said, his voice low but insistent. "The clock's ticking, Mary, and the longer you wait, the harder it will be to fix this." I stood frozen at the edge of the room, listening to their conversation unfold like a dark puzzle I couldn't solve. My mom's name wasn't just Mary. It was always Mom to me. But now, hearing Paul call her by that name, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was so much more to her than I had ever known. "You need to tell me everything," I said, stepping forward now, my voice shaking with a mix of frustration and fear. "What's going on? Who are these people? And why are you acting like this is all so normal?" Paul turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "This is bigger than just your family, Alex. This is bigger than you realize." His words were heavy with something I couldn't quite grasp. "Your mother made a choice, and now we all have to live with the consequences." I looked back at my mom, the person who had been my rock, my constant in a world full of change. But she wasn't who she used to be. Whatever had happened in those 5 years, whatever she had gotten involved in, it had changed her. And now, she was tangled in something that I couldn't even begin to understand. I wanted answers. I needed them. But all I was getting was more questions, more darkness. "I don't care what it is," I said, my voice trembling, "but I need you to tell me what's going on. I'm your son, Mom. I deserve the truth." But she didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked at Paul, as though silently asking for permission. The tension in the room was thick now, and I could feel the weight of everything I didn't know pressing down on me. "I'll tell you everything," she said softly, her eyes never leaving mine. "But you have to promise me something, Alex. You have to promise me that you won't try to fix this on your own." I nodded, my mind racing. "I promise, just tell me what's happening." And that was when she finally spoke the words that shattered everything I thought I knew. The silence in the room felt suffocating, and I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears as I waited for my mom to speak. I had never imagined this moment would come, and yet here it was, my mother standing in front of me, a stranger wrapped in her skin, a woman who had returned from 5 years of silence and darkness, offering me cryptic promises and warnings. She had said she would tell me everything. She had promised, and I was desperate to know the truth, even if it meant shattering every perception I had of my family, of my mother, of myself. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said, her voice breaking the tense silence. "But I never had a choice. No one does when you're pulled into something like this." I stepped closer to her, my hands trembling, heart pounding in my chest. "What do you mean, Mom? What happened to you? Who were you protecting me from? Who are these people?" She closed her eyes briefly, as though collecting herself before facing the full weight of her own history. When she opened them again, her gaze seemed distant, as if she were looking through me, seeing something from long ago. "They're not just people, Alex. They're a group, a powerful one. I didn't know at first who I was getting involved with, but once I realized it, I couldn't back out, not without putting you in danger." I felt the floor shift beneath me, and I had to hold onto the back of the couch to steady myself. "Who are they, Mom? Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why did you leave us for 5 years without a word?" My voice cracked, the frustration of years of silence and absence coming to the surface. The anger that had been building up in me, the hurt and confusion I had buried for so long, was rising now, demanding to be heard. My mom's eyes filled with tears, and she quickly wiped them away, trying to maintain her composure. "They're a part of a network, a group that operates in the shadows. They call themselves the Consortium," she whispered, her voice trembling with the weight of the words. "It's a secretive organization, one that uses people like me to do their bidding. They specialize in manipulation, in controlling lives, pulling strings, and erasing anyone who gets in their way." I took a step back, trying to process what she was saying. The Consortium. It sounded like something out of a spy thriller or a conspiracy theory, but the fear in her voice was unmistakable. This wasn't some wild tale, it was real, and she had been living it for 5 years. "Why you, Mom? Why would they come after you?" I asked, my voice barely audible now. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. Because I had something they wanted, she said, her eyes darkening. I was involved with them and I got too close. I knew too much about what they were doing, about the lives they were ruining. And when they realized I was no longer useful to them, they tried to force me into doing things I couldn't. They made it clear that if I didn't comply, they would destroy everything I loved, everything we had. I felt the room closing in on me, the weight of her words sinking deep into my chest. What did they want from you, Mom? Why didn't you tell Dad? Why didn't you tell me? She looked at me with a mixture of guilt and regret. I thought it would be safer if I just disappeared. I thought if I went away, they wouldn't hurt you, wouldn't hurt your dad. But that was a mistake. I was wrong to leave. I was wrong to think I could protect you by running away. I ran a hand through my hair, my mind racing, trying to make sense of the story she was telling me. But why didn't you just go to the police? Why didn't you tell someone? I tried, she replied softly, but they have connections everywhere. The police, the government, anyone who might have helped me was either too afraid to act or too deeply involved in their schemes. If I had gone to the authorities, they would have found me and they would have taken you, Alex. I couldn't risk that. I couldn't risk losing you. I was silent for a long moment, trying to wrap my head around everything. My mom, the woman who had always been my rock, had been caught in something so dark and dangerous that she couldn't even trust the people who were supposed to help her. She had disappeared to protect me, to protect us. But in doing so, she had left us without answers, without closure, and without any way of understanding what had really happened. Are they still out there? I finally asked, the question slipping from my lips before I could stop it. My voice was raw, and my chest tightened with the weight of the fear that was slowly building within me. My mom looked at me, her face a mixture of sorrow and fear. Yes, she said simply. They're still out there. They're still watching us, and they won't stop until they get what they want. I stepped back, running my hand over my face. What do they want from you now? Why are they back? They're trying to reclaim their hold on me, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They want me back to finish what they started, but I can't go back to them, Alex. I can't let them control me again. I won't. Her words hit me like a punch. They're still watching us. Those words echoed in my mind, reverberating through my thoughts. The reality of our situation had just shifted. This wasn't just about my mom's disappearance anymore. It was about something far larger, far more dangerous than I had ever imagined. I turned to my dad, who had been standing silently in the doorway. His face was pale, his expression grim. I could see the weariness in his eyes, the toll that all of this had taken on him. He stepped into the room slowly, like he wasn't sure how to enter a conversation that was unraveling the fabric of everything we had believed. What do we do now? He asked quietly, his voice breaking the tension. He looked at my mom, his eyes filled with a sorrow I hadn't seen in years. Mary, what happens now? My mom looked at him, her expression softening slightly. I don't know, but we can't keep running. We can't live like this anymore. We have to face them, all of us. A deep silence settled over the room. The enormity of what my mom was saying hit me all at once. She was ready to fight back. She was willing to stand up to the people who had controlled her, who had torn our family apart. But this wasn't just her battle anymore. It was ours too. I looked at my mom, then at my dad. I could see the fear in both of their eyes, but I could also see something else. Resolve. We had spent 5 years in the dark, but now the truth was coming to light. Whatever happened next, we would face it together. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. What do we do first? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear creeping in. Mom looked at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw a glimmer of the woman I had known. The strength, the courage, the will to protect her family no matter the cost. We fight back, she said, her voice resolute. And we don't stop until it's over. The weight of what we were about to undertake settled on my shoulders, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't just my mom's fight. It was ours, and we would face whatever came next together. The darkness had taken so much from us, but it wouldn't take any more. We would fight for our family. We would fight for the life that had been stolen from us.